are conducting a tribal monitoring training. It's been spearheaded by our tribal liaison. Everybody calls her Noni.
Okay, so I'm Noni, or Nana Benez. I'm the Tribal Relations Program Manager for Tonto National Forest. A tribal liaison for the Forest Service is an interesting position. It's kind of my job to make sure that the public and the tribes are aware of what we're doing on federal land, any undertakings, ground disturbing activities, or any actions at all that would be of concern to Indian tribes.
Well, the liaison really did. Noni Nez, she contacted our office in particular, and she was seeing who was on the roster thus far and wanted to have a lot of representation, as much as she could, from different tribes.
I'm supposed to be super aware of NEPA and the NHPA and help the tribes kind of decode where their moments of opportunity are and where their moments of power are.
So I thought it would be a great opportunity to further learn about the things that are out there, not just about where I come from, but other individuals as well, because we do want to build that relationship with Tonto, because they have a huge responsibility to oversee the lands that are there, and these are lands, again, that we may have once occupied, or lands of different indigenous peoples.
There's a need for tribes to interact with federal agencies and document their history on the land so that they can get protection for places, and so that they can have a seat at the table when it comes to making decisions.
We do government-to-government consultation with 11 Indian tribes. And one of the things that they've been telling us from the beginning is that, one, they want to be involved, they want to influence decisions, but one of the other things that they've been saying is that we need tribal monitors on the ground so that people can be identifying tribal values, traditional cultural properties, subsistence areas, sacred sites, which is something that right now archaeologists are not trained to do.
What we're trying to do is create a cadre of folks that can work alongside archaeologists and essentially provide them some tribal perspective.
We are training tribal monitors from the ground up. They've gone through 2 weeks worth of training now, 1 week of classroom to understand the background and get a hand of the law, the executive orders, the authorities that might pertain to cultural properties and historic properties.
Here I wanted to bring in 3 individuals that are fairly new to the advisory team, but I wanted them to know all the laws, especially the acronyms too, because a lot of the acronyms are used in meetings, and if you're not aware of what they are, it's, you know, you're just sitting there not really absorbing all that information.
And a week of on the ground, get out there, figure out what a survey is and what they're going to be taking part of, and what the landscape looks like and what's going to be expected of them. And this is just the beginning. We realize 2 weeks is not sufficient in order to make people fully functionable in the field, but they have now the background knowledge to be comfortable in the field and to ask more questions and to feel empowered.
Training for them to understand how an archaeological crew moves through the woods, how it moves through the desert, how that crew is going to be looking at sites, how they're going to be documenting sites, essentially so that the tribal members who are working alongside the crew can kind of walk that walk and talk that talk, so that they can be there as collaborators and partners.
That archaeologists are trained in a different science. They have book learning, but we have field experience. We can identify a lot of things that they're not aware of. So it's a combination. They're going to teach us, and we're going to teach them.
Yeah, archaeology is just one piece of the picture, and so being able to hear other parts of the picture, it really gives a lot more meaning to the land and to places. So
one of the things I always encourage folks to realize is try to look at it through the lens of someone else's experience, someone else's religion, someone else's teachings.
How is this affecting indigenous peoples? How is this affecting our sacred landscape? And how is this going to affect our future generations and our waterways and our culture? Because without these natural things, we as a people won't be able to continue.
There's this kind of like defensiveness, I think, when it comes to American Indians claiming cultural affiliation to certain places.
Oh, it's just a mountain, or it's just a stream. Why does it matter? Well, it's part of a bigger system. And so if you lose the system, you lose that piece of your culture that makes the system work.
You know, archaeologists do a lot of good things, but you can't really tell people's story for them, and you can't really get at the attachments that people have to places unless you work directly with them.
There are quite often instances where we've done surveys and we have things that we look for archaeology sites that don't necessarily jive with what tribal members would see as a sacred site or some place of cultural significance, because I don't have the teachings behind me to understand what that is.
And in the state of Arizona, there's 22 different tribes that are federally recognized here. So it's a lot of consultation that happens, and a lot of outreach, because sometimes people don't know what they don't know. So they have to be told that, or at least let them know a little bit more, because you can't just expect somebody to know everything already.
What we're trying to do is make sure we take tribal consultation and any information that we get from the tribes and put that in some sort of document, not necessarily a public document, but something where we can annotate what the tribe's concerns are and see if those things have the potential to be affected by the project.
You know, we take confidentiality really seriously, because sometimes people share things that are meant to help me understand them a little bit better, but that aren't meant for like the outside world. And
My ancestors were very reluctant to put this information out. But sometimes not putting that information out, not having that information really hurt us. Because when we do make a statement or a claim, they say, well, this is the first time we've ever heard about Zunis being, interested in this. And we've had things that were disappeared because we knew about sacred items, sacred objects, but we didn't say anything about it being sacred.
it's a fine line to walk, but I think the ultimate goal is that enough information would be out there that a broader public understands that these aren't just these simple static places. They're complicated and they're dynamic, and a lot of people have a lot of attachments.
I know some knowledge can be only shared between clans themselves. Societies have their own knowledge. Religious songs may have come through the area that only certain people will know.
They also have a need to protect the land and to access places that are meaningful to them and places that they have these deep histories.
What we are doing is taking another step in that collaboration.
It all ties in with that, working with people and relationships, and how can we as an agency better communicate that we try to protect these legacies that are still on the landscape.
We want to be able to tell them these are still utilized, and by them destroying it, there's no place else for the tribes to go.
Having them understand that we do want to have a voice. We should be given that opportunity. Because we're here first. We're the Aboriginal Native Americans.
I have seen very clearly that the Forest Service and the tribes are natural partners at so many different levels. We just are. We're the current stewards of the land. They're the original stewards. We have a lot of mutual interests and mutual concerns. And while there are areas where we don't necessarily agree, there's a lot that we can find to agree on and actually work together to accomplish as partners. And it's a terribly effective tool.
So I think that's a big victory for us, because now we have a seat at the table and we have a voice.
My hope going forward is that this idea of incorporating tribal members into archaeological survey becomes the norm, that it's not just the biology or the geology or the animals or the archaeology that's important. We're missing a component there, and it's the cultural value, it's the tribal value. And in order to make more responsible decisions as agencies and land managers, we need to be aware of that. We need to be considering it. It's our due diligence.
So federal agencies have a responsibility to work with tribes.
And that's one of the things especially working with like line officers and stuff, try to get them to understand that, yeah, I realize you really want that road or you really want that fence, but what is it to the people who are tied to that place? What do they think?
I mean, it's not supposed to be an easy job. We're a multiple use agency. We're supposed to be collecting as much data as possible so that we have holistic ideas about what's out there. So I don't think it's our job to be making my boss's job easier. I just want him to know what people care about. And that's what land managers are supposed to be taking into consideration.
Well, the value to the agencies is that they have a responsibility, a legal responsibility to consider history, tribal history on their lands, and they can then better manage places of significance for tribes. They can tell a more complete and more accurate story about the landscapes they manage if they work with tribes who have history there. They can build better relationships.
Working with the tribes is guaranteed effective. It makes things more efficient. It makes us go faster. It makes us go neater and cleaner. And it brings partners in that are invaluable. It brings perspectives to us that are invaluable in our broader decision-making processes.
So I'm hoping that as we move forward, it just continues to get a little easier. And, in the course of all the things that we do as a forest, that cultural resources isn't an afterthought.
We can literally work together to accomplish cultural resource surveys, timber stand improvement, any kind of resource management at the field level. We've got willing partners right next door to us.
It's important to get tribal people out there and interacting with landscapes that they don't have easy access to otherwise. So that's something that tribes have definitely expressed that they want. And so to have the agency sort of push that forward is great. It's great that, that recommendation is being heard and followed through on.
I'm just glad I'm here. It's cool to be in a room with people from different tribes,
One of the components of the training was that we actually had guest speakers from every cultural group that the Tonto consults with. So we had guest speakers from Hopi, from Zuni, from Apache, from Yavapai, from Salt River, from Gila River, all just to show up and to give their cultural perspective.
Well, that was my hope all these years of having all the tribes together, because we're having a chance to listen to each other's concerns, and the more we stand together, the stronger our voice will be. And I think this is a good start.
Sometimes when you go and experience something new and you meet other people who value the same things but have different outlooks a little bit, but you have similarities and you can share your cultures and things. I think that's what inspired me.
I really would like to learn more about it because, like I said, I don't know everything, so it's great to have opportunities like this to be able to further protect the things that we're responsible for.
Having those things for our kids and our grandkids, so not just speaking of it as it was something in the past, it should be happening now and to continue.
And so I think now I'm just trying to work on getting my little niche in there, and I think it's going to be with more monitoring and in the field work.
So hopefully, I feel like I would still be in our community, still doing this work. I feel like this is a position I would want to be in for the rest of my life.